Thank you for being here. I'm sorry. I want to turn a new page. I had your back during COVID. Now you have mine.
That's what Gavin Newsom, governor, Democratic governor, California, chronic Trump critic, said to Donald Trump yesterday when he met Trump at the LA tarmac. That's what Donald Trump needs to hear from Justin Trudeau. When we come back, what this means for the Trump tariff. We need political change, but we also need to resolve to resist. Yes, please like this broadcast right now if you can, because it helps us beat the algorithm, the suppression that we come under every day. You guys have been so wonderful lately. I want to thank you for that. We had a couple of difficult days this week because of family. You all know the trials and tribulations I've had with my mom out in BC. But thank you for staying so true. Thank you for supporting the station. Thank you for resubscribing in many cases, and we appreciate your help. And I hope you're having a wonderful Sunday. It's a beautiful sunny day here outside of Ottawa. So nice to join you on this Sunday morning. Historic stuff going on yesterday in Los Angeles as Donald Trump was greeted by Gavin Newsom. It's funny, the YouTube left, if you will, interpreted this as Gavin Newsom sabotaging a stunt, as they described it, from Donald Trump. Turns out this was Gavin Newsom begging for forgiveness for the things he's done, things he said. And the president of the United States has every right, in fact, every obligation to go out and visit a disaster area, which Los Angeles is. And if you've seen pictures of that devastation, it is absolutely beyond belief. So Trump was in his place to be there. But of course, while he's there, he talks about a lot of other matters that are so important. And I'm going to get to the Pierre Poilievre section in a minute, because I think Poilievre has finally come out, has been his own man. He's back in this tariff war game without going over the edge, actually presenting a plan. And we'll get to that later in the show. But I want to talk about what Gavin Newsom did yesterday and how it impacts Canada. And yes, it does. Trump has been saying for quite some time that he really doesn't like Justin Trudeau. He doesn't like his demeanor. He doesn't like his lack of respect, not only for Trump, but for the presidency, the office of the presidency. And let's listen to what Trump had to say about that, because it's
be demanding is we're going to be demanding respect from other nations. Canada, we have a tremendous deficit with Canada. We're not going to have that anymore. We can't do it. I don't know if it's good for them. As you probably know, I say you can always become a state. And if you're a state, we won't have a deficit. We won't have to tariff you, et cetera, et cetera. But Canada has been very tough to deal with over the years. And it's not fair that we should have a $200 billion or $250 billion deficit. We don't need them to make our cars, and they make a lot of them. We don't need their lumber because we have our own forests, et cetera, et cetera. We don't need their oil and gas. We have more than anybody. So, just as an example, with Mexico, we're dealing with Mexico, I think, very well. And we're just, we just want to be treated fairly with other nations, because there's hardly a nation in the world, and I blame this on us, and I blame it on politicians that, for some reason, mostly it's stupidity, but you could also say other reasons, but mostly stupidity. They've allowed other nations to take advantage of the U.S., and we can't allow that to happen anymore.
Now, of course, as I've said, Justin Trudeau has presented his border security plan, and this is why Trump is saying, give me a break. Now, you not only constantly slander me, but you present a border security plan, and I've said this now for 3 days running, 1.3 billion over 6 years is nothing. Nothing for now, nothing for this year. There's more money to take your guns away than there is for border security. I don't want to keep enunciating that, articulating that, but it's got to be said over and over again. So what was Trudeau's reaction to Trump saying that? How did Trudeau react? Because Trump said that about we don't get any respect at the World Economic Forum speech. What was Trudeau's reaction?
Announced that he wants a golden age for the American economy. The federal government has continued to say clearly, as I will, that everything is on the table. If he does move forward on tariffs on Canada, as he has said, whether it be back on January 20th or on February 1st or February 15th as a Valentine's Day present, or on April 1st, or whenever he says he's going to do it, as he keeps repeating, two things will happen. One, Canada will have a strong, robust response, because we don't want this, but we will respond if necessary. And two, prices for American consumers on just about everything will go up. And we don't think he wants that. So we're going to be there. He has talked about the border as being a great preoccupation for him. We have highlighted that less than 1% of...
Yeah. Preoccupation with the border. I've just showed you why it should be more than just a preoccupation. It is a demand, because Trudeau has not taken that demand seriously, and he continues to just pass off Donald Trump as that old guy south of the border who I don't have to listen to. Now, Donald Trump knows what's going on here. Justin Trudeau is playing a game. Justin Trudeau knows he cannot win a trade war, but he doesn't want to win the trade war. He wants the Liberal Party or himself to win the next election by running against Donald Trump. I have to say this every day because it's not obvious to a lot of people. It's not obvious that this is what the strategy is about. He's not talking to the Trump administration. Trudeau's not talking to the Trump administration. He's not presenting any sort of detailed plan. Pierre Poilievre presented a detailed plan yesterday. And once again, I'm not in the bag for Pierre Poilievre, but I want him to be the next prime minister rather than Justin Trudeau, Mark Carney, Chrystia Freeland, or Jagmeet Singh, obviously. And I don't think the People's Party of Canada is in a position to become the next government. I hope they elect some members to keep the Conservatives honest, because we have to keep pushing. No matter who wins, we have to keep pushing. Donald Trump, I think, heard that response from Justin Trudeau. This is what he had to say.
Canada will lose $200 billion a year with Canada. That's because we allow them to make cars. We allow them to take lumber. We don't need their cars. We don't need their lumber. We don't need their food products, because we make the same products right on the other side of the border. It's sort of crazy. So we've just allowed that. Bad management has allowed it over the last 4 years in particular to become very imbalanced. And I call him Governor Trudeau, but he's Prime Minister Trudeau when he was Prime Minister. I asked him, why would we do that? Why? And he was unable to give me an answer. He said, I don't know. And I said, do you think it's fair that we're paying $200 billion to keep Canada going? And what would happen? I asked him, what would happen if we didn't do that, if we didn't subsidize Canada? He said, we'd be a failed nation. And I said, then you should be a state. Because why are we paying all of that money to Canada when, we could use it ourselves, right? So we take care of their military. We're going to order about 40 Coast Guard big icebreakers, big ones. And all of a sudden, Canada wants a piece of the deal. They say, why are we doing that? I mean, I like doing that if they're a state, but I don't like doing that if they're a nation. Also, they've been very nasty to us on trade. Historically, Canada has been very, very bad to us, very unfair to us on trade. So we'll see how it all works out.
How could this be resolved? I think there's a very simple way. Yes, of course Donald Trump is talking nonsense at times. Of course he's talking crazy that there's a trade deficit, that they don't need our oil. Of course there's a trade deficit. It's all energy, as Daniel Smith has told him. And Donald Trump knows this by now. It's all energy. And yes, the United States needs our oil and gas. As I've said, their refineries are geared to refine our kind of oil and gas, which is more sulfuric. It's not the sweet crude the United States produces. So yes, they need our oil and gas, unless they want to totally recreate their refinery system. Donald Trump must know that. He's playing a game here. Yes, but he's saying to Justin Trudeau, show me some respect. Say I'm sorry for the crap I put you through. That's all he's really asking here. And I think Pierre Poilievre understands that. But before we get to what Pierre Poilievre's plan is, and I think he's articulated something, he needs to be back in this game because he cannot be irrelevant and he cannot be seen as being co-opted by Team Trudeau. And it's not Team Canada, it's Team Trudeau. He cannot be part of that gang. He cannot be part of Doug Ford's co-opting. Doug Ford has been co-opted by the Liberal government for years. He's in Justin Trudeau's pocket. I've said that for many, many months now. Actually, since the show went on the air, I've been saying Doug Ford is not a real conservative. Doug Ford will do anything to bolster and back up and reinforce Justin Trudeau and the Liberal government. That's what he's all about. Now, before we get to Pierre Poilievre's response, I find this extremely worrisome. You remember Charlie Angus? Yeah. Charlie Angus, he's the guy, of course, behind that crazy private members bill that will make it illegal, criminally illegal. A felony, not a misdemeanor, not a ticket, but criminally illegal, where you could be fined $100,000 or go to jail. It sounds like the Online Harms Act, doesn't it? They criminalize speech, but you can go to jail under Charlie Angus's private members bill, which is still before the House, by the way, when they go back, because it's a private members bill. This is the one that will criminalize any speech, any written information that promotes the oil and gas industry. Even a bumper sticker that says, I love Alberta oil, or I love Canadian oil and gas. Anything that promotes oil and gas or the energy sector, or what they call fossil fuels. Yes. So here's Charlie, who is not running again. And I knew Charlie vaguely when I sat on a committee for an MP quite some time ago. It was the industry committee. And Charlie was not quite so crazy in those days, but he's talking nuts. He wants an investigation, and he has growing concerns about political interference in the next Canadian election by American, as he says, oligarch Elon Musk and his social media platform X. Mr. Musk, the wealthiest individual in the world, has clearly demonstrated his desire to influence global politics. And blah, 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 blah. Recently, Mr. Musk turned his attention to Canadian political affairs, praising the current leader of the Conservative Party, aligning himself with Canadian far-right influence. Who are these far-right? Do you think Pierre Poilievre's far-right? No. He's right of center. Maxime Bernier is right of center. He's not far-right either. We don't have any far-right politicians in this country who are not just people existing on the internet. Angus continues here. I just love this. This is why I'm asking you to launch an immediate investigation into X and possible avenues for manipulation by Mr. Musk or right-wing influence. Am I asking that Elections Canada insist that during the coming federal election, Mr. Musk commit to algorithmic transparency, so that election observers, here, I'll put this up for you. If you can read it, I hope you can. If you can't, I'm reading it for you. so that election observers can see whether his platform is interfering with the promotion or suppression of political content. Elections Canada should utilize all available resources to safeguard our electoral process. The question is, do you have the regulatory means to ensure compliance if Mr. Musk decides to ignore Canadian electoral law? Mm-hmm. Now, he also talks, and here I'm not going to read any more of Charlie Angus's fantasies, but he also, of course, talks about Russian disinformation. This is what Mr. Musk is peddling. And of course, it's worth noting that Elon Musk is a Canadian citizen. Did you know he went to school in Kingston, went to Queen's? Did you know he spent time in Canada? So for Charlie Angus to pass off Elon Musk as some sort of international right-wing influencer or agitator or producer, creator of disinformation is absolute rubbish. But that's exactly what people like. They want to shut down X because it is fairly free of the authoritarian censorship that exists on other social media. Now, Meta is coming around because the age of Donald Trump means they have to change. Mark Zuckerberg has changed his whole policy outlook. He's changed his whole outlook on things because, yes, he has to live with Donald Trump as president. Maybe some of it's heartfelt. I don't know. But to suggest that that X should be shut down because Charlie Angus doesn't like the fact it fosters free speech. You can go on X and say some stupid things from the left. Happens every day. Look at it. It's a platform that allows free speech. Charlie Angus, the authoritarian socialist, I might even go farther, wants to shut it down and make it subject to regulatory powers because it's apparently producing disinformation. Now, this is a very dangerous step. But once again, we go back to the fact that Pierre Poilievre is in a difficult position. And I know this. Having worked on Parliament Hill, and I've made no bones about this, I've worked with the Conservative Party, members of Parliament. I've worked with the communications team on Parliament Hill. I know exactly what they're telling Pierre Poilievre right now. You can't be seen to be backing up Danielle Smith too much because Canadians think she's not fighting for Canada, but for Alberta. You can't be seen to be on Donald Trump's side because Canadians hate Donald Trump. They want retaliatory tariffs. So you have to be careful. So he's been put in a position of almost being stymied and being alienated from the issue, being completely sidelined. What he has to do is continue to say Canada First means provinces have autonomy over natural resources. Canada First means we can negotiate one-on-one with Donald Trump. Trudeau is not doing that. His cabinet is not doing that. Poilievre can do that as a prime minister. He needs to continue to fight for an early election as soon as possible and to define himself as the prime minister in waiting who can successfully negotiate with Donald Trump. That's what he needs to do. Not run away from it, not listen to communication advisors who are timid and who think you can't see anything supporting Alberta and Danielle Smith. You can't see anything supporting Donald Trump. He needs to say, Trudeau, Mr. Prime Minister, apologize to Donald Trump. Let's get on with this. Stop making it personal because Trump will make it personal every time. Justin Trudeau has made it personal himself. He started this. If you recall, during the first Trump presidency, Trudeau was able to get along fairly well with Donald Trump. He actually, at one point, compared himself to Donald Trump. I haven't got that story. I wrote that story for the Daily Caller at the time. Trudeau compared himself to Donald Trump, saying he, like Donald Trump, was a champion of the middle class. Of course, that was nonsense to say that about himself. It was true about Donald Trump. But Justin Trudeau actually equated himself and his policies to Donald Trump in the past. He at least tried. He's not trying anymore. He is making himself the SOB in the room. Now, Pierre Poilievre came forth with some really smart initiatives yesterday. I want you to listen to this because he is back in the game. He's back saying, I cannot just stand here and do nothing. We have to move forward.
A week away now from American tariffs, with almost all certainty. There's a real concern, I'm sure you've heard it in this region, about the potential impacts. I'm wondering if you can tell our viewers one specific thing, if you were in power, that you would do to respond to those.
Well, I don't want to, if you don't mind, I'd like to list a few things. One would obviously...
The more you want to list, the better. I think
you.
People would like to get some specifics about how we're going to tackle this.
Look, President Trump is a deal maker. He wants to win, but we're both going to lose as Americans and Canadians if we get into a trade war. So what I would say is, how do we position the decision for him so that he understands that America can only win if it allows open, unbridled free trade with Canada? If we get into a trade war. So what I open, unbridled free trade with Canada. How do we position the decision for him so that he understands that America can only win if it allows open, unbridled free trade with Canada?
Now, that's a reasonable position. He's not saying we're going to fight you. With retaliatory tariffs, they're going to make you suffer, because we can't do that. He's basing this on the fact there needs to be a mutual understanding. This is a reasonable response. And he keeps talking about the free trade that's always existed between Canada and the U.S., or at least since the Reagan-Mulroney years.
So I would retaliate, and I would target products and services that, A, we don't need, B, we can make ourselves, and C, that we can buy elsewhere so that we maximize impact on the Americans while minimizing impact on Canadians. Secondly, I would pass an emergency, bring it home tax cut on work, investment, making stuff in Canada, energy, home building, so that we can stimulate more economic growth here. Three, we need to become more self-sufficient. That means knocking down barriers, more interprovincial free trade. We have freer trade with the Americans today than we do with ourselves. We have to knock down those barriers, build pipelines, LNG liquefaction facilities to sell our stuff to the world without having to go through the Americans. If they're going to be an unreliable trade partner, we've got to find ways to sell more to ourselves and more to the rest of the world.
Do you see it as a dollar-for-dollar retaliation?
I would say so, yeah. It has to hit hard. And again, we have to be very pinpoint and surgical to make sure we're maximizing impact on the American side while minimizing impact on our side.
You talk
Basically, he's saying dollar for dollar because he knows he has to say that. Does he believe that? No, I don't think for a second. So that's simply not going to happen.
About self-reliance, have successive governments in Canada over the decades of all stripes become too reliant, too comfortable with the notion that U.S. will always be our biggest trade partner, and they're always right there, and we can put it on autopilot?
Yes, we live next door to the biggest military and economic superpower the world has ever seen. So a lot of our economics have just been based on enjoying, basking in that glow, but we can't rely on it. And so, right now, according to Stats Can, we have about a 7% effective tariff on goods between provinces. And we remember the Como decision. Some poor guy got fined because he brought alcohol from
Northern New Brunswick.
Yes, I think he was from Northern New Brunswick to Quebec. And we got to knock down those barriers. We have to approve resource plans if we get into a trade war. We can become self-reliant and start making.
Now, hearing the volume's a bit low on Poilievre, turn up the volume while he's speaking. I'll keep my mouth shut as much as possible.
Now, according to Stats Can, we have about a 7% effective tariff on goods between provinces. We remember the Como decision. Some poor guy got fined because he brought alcohol from
Northern New Brunswick.
Yes, I think he was from Northern New Brunswick to Quebec. And we got to knock down those barriers. We have to approve resource projects that allow us to get our stuff to market without going through the States. Right now, we are importing oil from the Americans and the Saudis in the East at world prices, and we're selling it to the Americans at discounts in the West. It's a crazy business model. We need pipelines, we need LNG plants, we need to approve resource projects quickly so that we can become self-reliant and start making things here in Canada.
It's been brought up by Alberta Premier Daniel Smith and recently by Premier Tim Houston just this week, the idea of reviving Energy East. But industry has moved on. You know, TransCanada Pipeline, who was the big proponent behind it, it's basically gone. They're TC. They took Canada out of their name. Right. They don't. They're in Texas now. Yeah, and no one seems to be willing to take the risk. Is that project dead? And Quebec has said it would never go through Quebec, by the way. Well, it's a shame that the Liberals killed that project. Did the Liberals kill it, or did TransCanada kill it? The Liberals killed it. TransCanada didn't put $1 billion into trying to get the project done just to throw up their hands and walk away. They were polite and stupid, but in reality, Trudeau killed Energy East. Would you build it? Would you bring it back? I would strongly support an east-west pipeline. That particular project probably won't be resuscitated, but the idea of selling Western oil to Eastern refineries is impeccable. And compared to the alternative is that we continue to sell at a discount in the West and buy at a premium in the East and lose money millions of times every single day. It's economic suicide and stupidity. And listen, you've got carbon tax Carney, who is opposed to pipelines. He opposed the Northern Gateway pipeline. You have Freeland, who helped Trudeau kill the Energy East pipeline. The radical woke environmental agenda is actually not good for the environment. It's only good to enrich the United States at Canada's expense. And by the way, it does a lot of good for Vladimir Putin as well. Premier Tim Houston said this week, he issued something of a vision for the province, and he said that it needs to be more self-reliant. And he would like to see mining, extraction of natural resources move quickly. Yes. Would you, if in government, change regulations or remove regulations for speedy approvals? Yes, I will repeal the anti-development Liberal law C-69, under which it now takes an estimated 19 years to get a mine approved. So here we are with the 5th biggest supply of lithium in the world. We don't mine lithium. We have the 6th biggest supply of natural gas on planet Earth. We don't export a single cubic foot of it overseas. We have the most uranium, the most potash, the list goes on, but because our laws are designed to block projects from proceeding, businesses don't put their money here. We've lost $500 billion in net investment from Canada to the U.S. This is Canadian money building mines, pipelines, business centers, factories, with paying American workers with our money. I will bring it home. We will repeal C-69. My goal is to have the fastest permits for mines anywhere in the developed world. Let me ask you about transfer payments, because that's obviously another concern here. And again, Premier Houston of Nova Scotia brought this up early in the week, and he basically telegraphed to Nova Scotians that, look, regardless of who forms the next government, we should be ready for fewer transfer payments to the province. If you were to be Prime Minister, will you cut transfer payments to maritime provinces? That's not in my plan. What my plan is to enrich the maritime provinces by making... So you won't cut them? I'm not proposing cuts. What I'm proposing is to grow the economy so that provinces... So we have provinces that are have-not can become have provinces. And there's no reason why the maritime provinces cannot move into the have category by unleashing more production of resources, by approving pipelines, natural gas production and liquefaction through a massive tax cut. We need a big tax cut on energy, investment, home building, making stuff in Canada. All of that can make Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, and all of the provinces actually could move into the have category.
And under the formula, that would make it all more affordable for the Canadian taxpayer.
You've been calling, of course, for an axe the tax election.
Yes.
Has some of the steam been taken out of that message? Because your likely competition, the two leading candidates in the Liberal leadership race, have both suggested that they'll take the consumer carbon piece out.
You believe them?
Tax out. Well, it doesn't matter what I think. You're the one who wants to be Prime Minister.
So let's look at what we're talking about. You've got carbon tax Christia. I call her that because she was the finance minister who not only kept the carbon tax but raised it by 160%.
But now she's saying she'd take it off.
Oh, yes, we should believe her now. Right before a leadership vote and an election, she claims that she's been wrong for the last 9 years. She even bragged that she raised the carbon tax during an inflation crisis. And then you have carbon tax Carney, who's been Trudeau's economic advisor for the last 4 years. He complained the carbon tax wasn't high enough. And now, right before the election, they'll tell you they've changed their mind. Well, here's what they're going to do. They're going to pause they'll pause the carbon tax right before the election. And they'll say, forget all about the last 9 years. And then if they're reelected, they'll hike it higher than ever before. If you want to axe the carbon tax, if you want to take the GST off new homes so you can afford a place to live, you have to vote for the common sense Conservatives.
To compare that interview and the plan unveiled by Pierre Poilievre to your average discourse with Justin Trudeau, where he will say three things over and over again. Price on pollution, 8 out of 10 Canadians getting more money back in their pockets, and free lunch for kids. That's all Justin Trudeau has to offer. Now, before we go, a couple of things I want to really share. This is incredible. Mark Carney says he's started at the top many times before as he runs to become Prime Minister. So in other words, he doesn't need the public. He doesn't need you voters to affirm him as the leader of the Liberal Party and thus the Prime Minister of Canada. He started at the top before. What does he need you for? What does he need voters for? What does he need the public for? What does he need legitimacy for? Because he's always started at the top. I really have nothing but contempt for Mark Carney. This is a globalist who's always left disasters wherever he's gone and somehow construed these disasters to be successes. Mark Carney is a fundamentally flawed individual. He's somebody who cannot admit his grievous mistakes. And before I go here, have a look at our new newsletter. It's out yesterday. We've been getting positive response from this. We're writing more on Substack. We're trying to incorporate all of this into a weekly newsletter that's going to go directly to you. This is free. And it is going to be astounding. And yes, FREE. It's free in more ways than one. It's about free speech, and it's going into your digital mailbox free. That's what this is all about. We are at the precipice of what could potentially be a catastrophe. What Pierre Poilievre outlined today was the equivalent of saying we have nothing to fear but fear itself. As Franklin Roosevelt said in 1933, whether or not he was left or right or centrist or the New Deal was good or bad, Roosevelt's attitude was right for the time. We cannot run around fearfully listening to Justin Trudeau. The disaster is coming, and I love it because it means I'm going to keep staying in power. Pierre Poilievre outlined positive responses in this interview, and that's what we need, is a positive response. We do not need to be fearful. We could enter into a golden age of economic growth for Canada if we just merely cooperate with Donald Trump. And if Justin Trudeau would put the country first instead of himself first, instead of Team Trudeau first, and just say to Donald Trump, I'm sorry, I've always worked against you. I'm sorry, I have said things about you as being an evil populist, and it's time to move on because I'm moving on. You're the president. I'm going to do this for the good of the country. I'm going to do this because I really do love Canada. Do you think you could actually hear Justin Trudeau say that? Whether or not he believes it, that's what he needs to do. Stop blaming Daniel Smith. Stop blaming Pierre Poilievre. Stop saying it's all Donald Trump's fault when you're the one baiting Donald Trump. Let's go forward together with a Team Canada led by Pierre Poilievre and Daniel Smith, and not be co-opted to Team Trudeau like Doug Ford has become. Let's have a true conservatism. That means prosperity for all Canadians from east to west, from coast to coast to coast. Let's have a prosperity that's based on economic, fiscal conservatism. That means fewer regulations, but more jobs and more money in your pocket because there's fewer and lower taxes. That's what we need to focus on. That's the Canada that's possible under a new government. We need new elections. We need a new government to negotiate one-on-one with Donald Trump. Justin Trudeau is incapable of doing that, but at least he can apologize for the damage he has created. He needs to say, I'm sorry to Donald Trump. Thank you for watching today. Don't forget to check out our merchandise store. We've got some great stuff. I've been using this mug today. Have a look at it. I appreciate your support so much. Please subscribe today if you haven't. God bless you. Have a wonderful Sunday. I'm having Neil Oliver on the show, probably either tomorrow or Tuesday. I'm just confirming with him now. We're going to be talking about his views on what's happening in Canada and the U.S. right now. Always a great interview. He's a good friend and fantastic spokesman for common sense. Thanks for watching today.